Anubis wants to say hi. I just fed her and she's hoping there's more. Oh, yeah. Not right now. It'll be my turn. I thought it would be important at this point to answer such questions as, how did I get here? What makes me think that I have some dissociative disorder? How did I become aware of it? And why am I okay with this? I'll tell you why. It all began when I had stopped channeling for other people, stopped being a spiritual advisor, stopped hanging around in those communities to go inward, to fix myself. Because why do I keep drawing these same experiences? Why do I keep drawing the same thing in men, in women, and poverty, and, you know, my circumstances being destroyed, when I know that I took the correct steps to go somewhere, to be something, to receive financial support and everything like that. So what's with the sabotaging? Is it all self-sabotaging? What about me needs to change? Somebody who I don't even know, I don't know where it came from, I don't know how they got my address. It was just a box shipped to me. One of the items in the box was a book by Dr. Gabor Mate, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. He is I think he was a brain surgeon who authored a book, and he's from Canada. The book is called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and I wondered why this was sent to me, because at the time I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs. I mean, it was all about drug addiction and all of that. But I read one sentence in that book that just totally changed what goes on in my mind. And that sentence was, PTSD is what happens to a healthy brain when it experiences trauma. Wow. My brain, some part of me, probably many parts of me, just was like, oh, I'm healthy. I did the right thing. And so I began to consciously change my neural pathways, the way I could think, because there was always negative thinking, always drawing me down the same script, like on a loop. You're fat, you're ugly, you're greasy, you're nasty, you're slut, all those things that my mother drilled right into me. So I started off really slow. Like, I didn't think that I was beautiful. I wasn't allowed to think that I was beautiful, because to put myself, to act beautifully, to feel beautifully in front of my mother would be offensive, and she would have to stomp on that. So I didn't have it within myself to call myself beautiful, but I could tell myself I'm not the most offensive face on the planet, and, I don't need to call myself ugly. I don't need to give a sense of false humility. I don't have to, if somebody says that, oh, you're so smart, I can say, yes, I am intelligent. I got straight A's in grade and middle school, so I'm not stupid. I understand that. I didn't think myself as highly intelligent. Just give myself as much credit in any area and aspect that I could. And then, of course, that grew and expand, where if I catch my reflection out of the corner of my eye, I just see this beautiful, glowing woman. And I allow myself that sometimes. And at that point, there was this large tiger's face I would associate with a demon. And it was like, aha, that's where you hid that. That's where you hid that. So I realized that I had closed off cherished parts of myself. And then I was experiencing two male figures, one kind of homosexual, uncertain, standoffish, wanting to be with me, but not wanting to be with me. And then another one that was very, Christ-like. And so I had these two masculine aspects. And it was just going through my head constantly, and I just did a major stomp. Like, my head's thinking, what's the oldest entity, the strongest entity, the most powerful entity? Well, hell, Grandmother Lava. And I just stomped on the ground, and everything became quiet when I called upon her. But at the time, I was still unaware that that's what was going on inside of me, because I had just come out of the whole angels and demons and all of that. So then you're doing the inner work, and they say, write a letter to your inner child. So I say what your inner child needed to hear, and then it would just, I would say, and I would do something magnificent and wonderful for myself and my self-esteem and comfort, an aspect of my inner child. But then there was uncertainty and confusion and a fracturing that happened. So in my childhood, obviously there was trauma, and so there was different versions of me dealing with different aspects of each traumatic event, just splintering and splintering and splintering until I'm not aware of how many aspects of my child. But I became aware gradually that I had an inner teenager who was like the peanut gallery and just makes snide remarks. Once it started to open up to me, and then it began to trust me, and it became very sisterly and things like that. I much, much admire my teenage self. I mean, I felt a hand on my butt. I turned around, smack! Turned out to be my boss. He didn't fire me, he apologized. A boyfriend at the time closed the door, slammed it in my face. I didn't become conscious of myself, my circumstances, after that door slammed in my face, until his mother was thanking me because I had physically hurt him in a certain way that I never would have thought of was possible. Obviously, I'd lost time there. I did not witness myself doing these things. So I became very stern and strict that I would not lose consciousness again. I would not do anything that I was aware of. And so what I imagine a front was created. This is the personality. This is the limitations. This is how I will act. And so I limited myself only to that personality. And of course, throughout, I had to adopt and expand or contract that personality according to the relationships and circumstances that I was in. Let's see what came next. The realization. There in Slab City, at the end of a summer, where I just totally disassociated, and I was aware that I was disassociated. And I remember in my mind understanding that the part of me that was always off in the ethers, gathering knowledge, and was the sprightly source that I came from, always freedom, never had to pay attention, never had any responsibilities, could just have fun and enjoy its existence, was suddenly in the driver's seat because the driver had disappeared, taken off, abandoned them. And so there were several times I would write everything down before I'd go to the store, where the resources were, this much on food stamps, this much on the cards, the cash cards, Cash App. And I'd take it to the store along with a list of everything that I wanted, and I'd go according to that list. And sometimes I could do it, get the monies and the resources where they were supposed to come from, and other times I would look at it and I would just freeze and forget. And thankfully, there were people around me who understood. Like, they saw the big difference in the personality. And they would make it okay for me. But then I gathered myself up. And I stopped experiencing that. And I thought that everything was okay. And then I had several other experiences that culminated with full-on the issues in my subconscious were being reflected by the issues in my community. I was surrounded by schizophrenics, people with personality disorders, paranoid, schizophrenic, multi-personality disorders. I mean, I was surrounded by people, and it was triggering my inner reality that I had opened the can of worms to. At one point, I told myself, it's okay to go crazy. I don't have to remain sane. I'm surrounded by absolutely insane people. They're being fed. They've had some sort of shelter. They're being clothed. Just give up control. Let it go. And it did culminate just before I left. And some really supernatural things happened there. So it became difficult to clarify how these people are responded, because I know I was helping other people through their schizophrenia and coping with their dissociative disorders. But then it came to the point where, they had had enough, and I couldn't go back to being what I was to them before, which is what they would have preferred. So that's when I've scooted out of there. And also, when you're doing this inner work, the disembodied ones that, have been identified and treated and kept at a distance as angels and demons and things like that, of course I got their attention. All kinds of wacky things. And I know that I'm not crazy because I was sitting there in my camper all by myself, but I was aware that the consciousness of somebody else was psychically, telepathically observing what was going on in my head. So I set out the bait in my thoughts. I said, well, if you're my guy and you're here, then you would know that I just had an experience of the void, and you will mention the void the next time we run into each other. Well, from that suspected person was a note left on a chalkboard in a place where we would normally bump into one another. But I had liberated them with my understandings to the point that they actually left the slabs after many, many, many years of attempting to leave, but finding themselves right back in Slab City. So they nobody believed that they would leave. And all of a sudden they had left. I had liberated them. And because we were psychically connected, psychic energy, and people manipulating one another with psychic energy, whether it be a demon informing, another person what they've observed in me, or whether it's the other person being conscious of observing me. So it can get very confusing. What I believe now is that some of us, I believe humanity's been driven to this, but some of us are taking on this experience and healing it, while others stay grounded in one personality and may deny that they've fractured in any way, so that they can be the anchors. I'm doing a lot of inner work. I'm losing track of time. I can't leave my home because this part of me wants to wear this. Another one finds this acceptable. I can write this. I can't say this. I can do that. And it's just a lot of information trying to find a clear course of action that feels good all around, makes sense, and will be received well by others without compromising the quality and authenticity of the expression. Did you get all that? Because it's straight in my mind. So somebody has to be able to go out there and transfer the food to the grocery store, so that once in a while, when I've got everything together and I get it off focus, and I can do that, I can make appointments. I don't always like to, and I don't like to force myself into a clarified space because I'm busy working on everybody else in here. And I call them aspects. I don't call them alters or other people, because I'm perfectly aware that there is one person who's just fractured into a whole different part. Authentic expressions were withheld, because we could be sad that our child is going, and at the same time we could be cheering them on and be really proud of them. So it's normal to have two different feelings, but which one do we think is okay and appropriate? Which one will our child receive or be offended by? And so we separate, and then we struggle, and how much of this, and we worry about those things because we were conditioned to worry that something really bad, our survival depended on people wanting to support us in our existence when we were younger. So we got to drop that. We can support ourselves. That was one of the biggest reasons why I learned primitive living skills, and I could go out into the woods and I could survive there for at least a little while. I didn't do a very good, thorough exploration of wild edibles. But two, I also know that there's a part of me that knows darn well that I don't need to eat, drink, and all that. Like, they have supernatural so-called powers, which humanity has not allowed in one another and themselves in a very, very long time. So that is the reason why there are some of us, and probably many of us, and that's clear because the LGBTQ2A plus community is on the rise, and it's because it's time for humanity to accept that we are multifaceted, multidimensional beings. So there are some of us who are going to go through this process and identify with it and take it on and do what we need to do to make a cohesive personality, an individuated being, so that source can have its other, and I can have my others, and I can have source as well. So this is an individuation process, and some of us have to do the work so that others don't have to. And so we could have everything that we want and need and desire out of the experience of existence as a multiplicity and as a singularity.